Let's get into some details about metabolic syndrome. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I've been doing a carnivore diet, lost over 150 pounds. I've been doing it consistently for about just over 2 years. And I was doing it inconsistently for a number of years before that. The reason why this is relevant to this conversation we're going to have today is every time I started a carnivore diet, my metabolic syndrome got better. Before we get too far into this, I want to know how many of you have any of these symptoms. 2 of the 5, 3 of the 5, all 5 of the 5. Maybe you don't have any of the 5. Leave a comment down below. People are going to learn from our experience and our mistakes so that they don't have to go through it themselves. Now, I didn't get rid of all my symptoms of metabolic syndrome, but quickly, 2 or 3 of them would get corrected rather immediately, usually pretty much within the first month. Some of these other pathologies I had eventually got better because my metabolic syndrome got more under control. Everything else started to get more under control. Metabolic syndrome is often the root cause of lots of other health problems that we have. But what causes metabolic syndrome? Well, when you look over the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, I think most people will know what you need to do to correct it. Even if you don't have a lot of scientific background or you don't know much about health, I think you'll know right off the bat when you see these symptoms. So let's get into some of these symptoms. High blood pressure and impaired fasting glucose, low HDL, high triglycerides, obesity, especially around the waistline. That's where it's really key. We want to have a waistline under 40 inches if you're a man, and I believe it's 38 inches if you're a woman. So I had all 5 of these symptoms. That's not a good place to be. When you have 3 of the 5 symptoms, you're pretty much diagnosed with metabolic syndrome. So you want to pay attention to these, any 3 of the 5. It doesn't matter which 3 of the 5 you have. I think most everyone can agree that if you go on a low or zero carb diet, that'll manage a lot of these health problems. I think most anyone can figure that out. But also some activity is a good way to manage some of these things. Everyone knows stressing your respiratory system and circulatory system helps build a better circulatory system and respiratory system. So different types of exercises are a great way to go to start managing these health problems. But I found even without the exercise, diet corrected all of them. Now, I still have one of these symptoms left. Even though I've lost a lot of weight, I still have a ways to go. And my waistline is still over 40 inches. So, you want to measure your waistline not by your jeans, because your jeans aren't an accurate representation. That's where your hips are. You measure your waistline around your belly button. So you can't turn around and say, I'm a 42-inch jean, but really you might be a lot bigger when it comes to your stomach. So right off the bat, within the first few weeks, I knocked some of the symptoms right off the list. And that's a pretty neat thing to do because you want to be under 3 symptoms. So I knocked 2 of them off the list right off the bat, my fasting glucose and my blood pressure. My blood pressure wasn't necessarily too high. I did have an issue with it because I was on blood pressure medication from a doctor. And when I went off of that blood pressure medication, that's when I had high blood pressure. I didn't have high blood pressure before I was put on the medication. The doctor put me on it when I was unconscious. Yes, I was unconscious because I had a heart attack a number of years ago. What happens when you have a heart attack is they give you a cookie cutter of medications. They give you a couple different blood thinners, they give you blood pressure medication, and they also give you cholesterol medication. Now, from a doctor's point of view, that all makes sense, but I didn't have blood pressure problems, and they put me on 2 different blood pressure medications. I thought that was quite ridiculous, but I stayed on it for about a year and a half, and then I told my doctor, look, I'm going off of it, because on that blood pressure medication, I had high blood pressure. That was pretty stupid. And they kept trying to tweak it until I finally said, look, I'm going off of this. I want your help. Otherwise, I'll go off of it by myself. Now, I wouldn't have gone off of it by myself, but I knew my doctor would have to oblige because it's dangerous. Keep this in mind. It's dangerous to go off blood pressure medication by yourself. So abdominal obesity is one of those problems we have with our insulin. So our fasting glucose has a pretty direct correlation with our fasting insulin. Get one of them under control, the other one's going to get under control eventually. So this is the weirdest situation I went through. Even though my blood sugar was perfect, my insulin was still resistant. It was really resistant. So even though I was losing weight, my insulin didn't get better fast enough. So even to this day, I still have insulin resistance. Now, I wasn't diagnosed as a diabetic, believe it or not. I was diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, and that's when I was over 400 pounds. Think about that. My doctor didn't even turn around and say, we got to do something about this. You're in dangerous territory at over 400 pounds. Instead, he said, Well, your blood sugar is a little high, but it's not actually off the chart. So you're actually just pre-diabetic. Just because my blood sugar was good doesn't mean I didn't have severe insulin resistance. I clearly did. Going on a strict zero-carb carnivore diet helped balance that. It got rid of my bloating and I started losing inches on my waist. But it only got me so far because insulin resistance can take a long time to correct. My high blood pressure went away within the first month. Now you got to keep in mind when you get your blood pressure taken at your doctor's office, the first thing they do, and I'm sure you've been through this, the first thing they do is they sit you down and take your blood pressure. You are not giving them an accurate reading when you sit down and get your blood pressure taken right off the bat. You usually only have about 10 minutes with your doctor. You have to insist that you'll get your blood pressure taken at the end of the session, not the beginning of the session. It's actually damaging because it's a misleading number. If they get your blood pressure right off the bat after you walked 50 feet, maybe 100 feet to the doctor's office, you're gonna have higher blood pressure than if you were just sitting there for 10 minutes. Your blood pressure taken at rest is supposed to be at rest, not after you just exerted yourself. Even if you're a healthy person, it's still a little bit of exertion and it's not perfectly accurate. You have the right to tell them, no, I'll do it afterwards. You're not against getting it done. You just want to make sure it's done accurately. So keep that in mind with your blood pressure. Now, as far as my fasting glucose went, that got better. Like I said earlier, my insulin was still a little whack. And I came across an article that talked about how metabolic syndrome has a link to gout. And I had a history of gout. I even had kidney stones from my gout. They were uric acid based kidney stones. So that was not fun to go through. Gout is bad enough. Gout-based kidney stones is a whole other level of pain. So I thought, wait a minute, can I still have screwed up insulin even though my fasting blood sugar is good? So I started taking this product called berberine, and that managed my blood sugar, which better managed my insulin resistance. But it only got me so far, and I'm still dealing with that insulin resistance, but now I'm doing it so much better. We talked about it in my last video. What I've done is switched over to a high-fat carnivore diet. I'm talking 90-10 ratio. So my protein's lower than I would normally want it, but this is temporary. This is to help get my insulin back under control. And slowly, I'm going to start upping my protein each day. I'm shooting for about 140 grams a day. I honestly don't get that with my protein most days, but I'm shooting for that every day. I find it's tough to get all my meals in a day. 6 meals is tough. And if I don't exercise and go for my walks in a day and I don't do both together, it's tough to get in my 6 meals. If I do only one or the other, it's some work, but I can do it. So 5 meals, if I'm not too active that day, like yesterday, I didn't have time to go for a long walk or to the gym. So I only had 5 meals. I just wasn't hungry enough to have a 6th. And these multiple small meals are keeping my insulin at a low level because they're small. I just got my blood work done, as some of you know. So because of that, we can see the difference. My insulin just 2 months ago, my fasting insulin was at 255, and now it's down to 181, something like that, 187, and it's trending down. So if I give this another month or two, I should start burning fat and get out of my plateau even faster. So when you're in a plateau, try and figure out what the problem is. It's probably a hormone issue or some other underlying health issue you need to take care of. Every time I got my blood work done at my doctor's office, that's the one thing he didn't check was my insulin. How could I be overweight and have a doctor that didn't check my fasting insulin consistently every time I got blood work done? That's beyond me. I can't understand that logic. So now that that's under control, my fasting blood sugar should look even better as time goes on. It hasn't been a problem starting carnivore, but it should get even better. My high triglyceride levels, they were an issue quite a while ago, but going to carnivore, my triglycerides are at a nice spot. I can't complain about them. They're usually in the 90s somewhere. And more importantly, my triglyceride to cholesterol ratio is really good, and that's what's important as well. But that ratio has been consistent for the last 1.5 to 2 years. So I'm not too worried about that ratio because those numbers haven't changed. My triglycerides haven't changed and my cholesterol's gotten even better. My HDL is up, my LDL is down. Even though I don't care too much about that, it'll make my doctors happy. And that, of course, brings us back to the HDL. My HDL is going up. Activity is one of the best ways to increase your HDL, but apparently so is going on an extremely high-fat version of carnivore. So this is working really well for me. I have no complaints. Yeah, the meals get a little boring. You know, I'm eating a lot of fat, and I'm eating a lot of rendered fat. Cold rendered fat is the equivalent of a carnivore's tofu. It's kind of bland. You need some salt to give it a little bit of flavor. And you know what? It gets me through the day. And keep in mind, this tallow that I'm eating is only going to be at this heavy amount temporarily. Over time, I'm going to drop it down to 85 and then 80% and then hopefully down to about 75%. I'll see where my happy sweet spot is. But for now, I'm keeping it really high. Yes, my protein is low, but once again, it's temporary. I'm hoping that it's going to help my body to cannibalize damaged proteins in it, the equivalent you'd get from fasting. And you're thinking, well, why don't you just fast? And as some of you know, I just can't fast. Look into some of my old videos for that explanation. So the reason why this information is relevant to you is lots of these health problems that create metabolic syndrome are the foundation for other health problems. High blood pressure damages the interior walls of your arteries. You don't want that. That causes damage that you don't feel for decades afterwards when you eventually have a heart attack or stroke. So you want to make sure that you're getting that under control at a young age and to try and not let that get out of control. The damage is being done in your 20s and 30s. Probably from the time you've been overweight. So if you've been overweight for 20 or 30 years, well, that's probably about the same amount of time you've been building this silent killer in your arteries for, because obesity is often linked with high blood pressure. Do you see how all this kind of works with each other? Correcting it is like knocking down dominoes. Get these 5 conditions balanced, get them looked afterwards. Even if you want to start just one at a time, try working at it. You can do it all through diet. That's the crazy part. I've lost a lot of weight without any exercise in the past. And I've also lost a lot of weight through the years, not paying any attention to diet and only doing it through exercise. People say you can't out-exercise a bad diet. They know that on paper. I've done it myself personally. They're regurgitating what they've been told before. Maybe they read it in a study somewhere. Maybe it's other personal trainers that have told them. And you might argue, well, you had the metabolism of a teenager. No, I didn't. I was easily pushing 400 pounds when I was 16 years old. That is not the metabolism of a teenager. I got that under control 100% through exercise. I wasn't trying to do it, but I started exercising a lot, and that was the side effect of it. I didn't plan on it. I wasn't trying to lose weight. The best is when you marry the two, diet and exercise. Get that under control with a carnivore diet, and you'll get healthy enough to start moving around better and more efficiently, and then you can start getting into some exercise that you find interesting enough to keep up as a hobby. It's not the same if it's just a workload added to your workday schedule. You want to try and find something that's going to feel like a hobby. Thanks a lot for tuning into this video. Take care, and I'll see you another time.